We're going to talk about meetings that matter. Can we have online meetings that are less stressful, more meaningful, and more fun? Can we make some meeting magic together? And wherever you are in the world, in whatever time zone, I welcome you. Thanks for being here. So let me get started by telling you a little bit about myself. I've had a communications consultancy since 1994. I have facilitated, organized, and attended hundreds, if not thousands, of meetings and events in the last almost 30 years. For my own sake, for my business, for personal reasons, but also for the clients that I serve in government, large organizations, small business, large business. So I've either hosted them for them, I've coordinated them for them, managed events. So I have lots of experience in meetings in real life. But I got a real interest in general in remote tools as they started to evolve a couple of years ago. I started using Zoom itself, especially for remote coaching, so I'm able to work with clients around the world. And I've always had this very big interest in the digital environment. So I'm the author of 4 books, including a book that was just released in June called Effective Communication at Work, Speaking and Writing Well in the Modern Workplace. And in that book, I talk a lot about the shift to remote work. I had no idea that the pandemic was coming and that we would all be forced over this digital divide and working from home and having meetings for nearly all of the purposes that we want to connect with one another from our home offices or from our home environments. So I didn't know it was coming. The book covers a lot of that. And I'm going to just share with you some tips today around how to have more effective meetings. But I also want to say there's a big question that I like to deal with in all of my work, and that is, what does it mean to be fully human in a technical world? I try to answer that question in my books, in my blogs, and in my presentations. We need to answer that question now more than ever. So just a little context. Remote meetings and work aren't new. Of course, we've been having teleconferencing, video conferencing. It's been in regular use for the past several years. Businesses and industry have become way more global. Internet and digital tools have connected us worldwide for at least a couple of decades, with social media for the last 15 years. But what has changed is this huge digital leap that I mentioned earlier, this leap across the digital divide. And the global pandemic and the restrictions and the lockdowns and this isolation that has been regulated as a result of the global pandemic has meant that we've had to become completely reliant on technology to stay connected, to stay informed, to be entertained, to be educated, and of course, to be employed. So we've entered a really new way of being in the world, and my prediction is that we may never go back. So what does this mean? It means there's challenges and there's opportunities. What is it that makes online meetings so challenging, and what are the opportunities that are emerging? And so we're going to talk today, the first half about the challenges and the second half about the opportunities. So I'm going to start with a quote from William Gibson, who's a speculative fiction author, an American-Canadian writer, and a futurist, who said, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet." I've used his quote actually in 2 of my 4 books. There is a wide disparity in tech skills and meeting skills, and this means we all need to become patient teachers and learners, students of the platforms and their features. But this can make meetings really difficult if you're all operating at a different level of competency. The virtual environment itself kind of robs us of those nuanced communication skills, such as real eye contact, reassuring touch, for example, encouraging pat on the shoulder, of course, appropriate touch, and the physical energetic cues. We can tell, in a sense, when we're in an in-person engagement, if things are going sideways. We can feel the atmosphere in the room change. When I polled my friends and colleagues about this, they said they actually miss that the most. They miss this sort of invisible field, and we want more of that than the digital environment currently offers. We're also in this state where there's a merging of daily life and work. Everything is taking place at home, especially for those of us that are in a lockdown or still in our bubbles because of other considerations. So the online environment is very distracting. So we're merging our daily lives, but all these distractions around us in our home environments, and then we're going online, where of course our attention is the currency, and marketers and others are trying to get our attention in multiple ways. And we find this draining. This necessity to try to be focused on so many things at once is really draining. And then to be spending time in front of a screen, we're finding lots of new research coming out about things like Zoom fatigue. So I think we need some new self-care processes, or at least some more intentional ones. And I think the other challenge is that we're going to be tempted perhaps to try to imitate or replicate real life experiences. And you know what I'm saying here on the slide, I think it's likely we're going to have to invent something new. Some new protocols, some new etiquette, some new ways of being. And it's going to be a kind of a magic. It's going to be alchemical, you know, an alchemy process. So that maybe will come up more in our opportunities discussion. So let me start with the very first challenge that I posed, which is this notion of digital literacy, the fact that we're in an uneven playing field. So my very first tip for you here, whether you're hosting the meeting or whether you're a participant, is to try to democratize the digital skills. Know your tech. There are many great resources. Steve Dotto is one where you can learn all kinds of great technical insider tips on how to set up your camera, your lighting, your audio, and your background to be most effective. So test these things out, try them, practice, and then level the playing field by sharing your know-how. Give your participants advance notice. Offer them the tech tips in writing. Send out an email that lists all the things they need to know about the meeting, including links and passwords and so on, and keep them handy. Bonus tip, looking at the camera emulates eye contact. It's a really lovely way to let people know that you're listening and present and tuned into them. This is one of those nuanced communication techniques. Really important to be empathetic and engaged. You need to start to develop online a wider set of verbal cues, so you will need to be more directive, verbally directive. Remember, on Zoom, depending on what you're doing, participants can't always see you, and sometimes people have chosen not to enable their video. So you're going to have to be more directive, and you're going to have to ask more questions and really actively listen to the responses. Also use gestures on camera. This helps to create engagement. It helps to lift the energy in the session, and it's really a much more normal way of communicating. Lean into the chat and other features that to help with engagement. Ask some good questions in there, and practice emotional intelligence. You know, I'm aware as you're listening to this that you're probably in various situations in the world. You may be coping with issues such as grief and loss. You may be having to navigate family life and homeschooling for children. You may be trying to figure out to stay in or go out, or you may not even have those options. So it's important to be an encouraging facilitator and invite people to share what's going on for them, really. So now, the third challenge that I posed was navigating daily challenges at work or at home. Set loving boundaries. Set yourself up to win whether you're leading this session or whether you're participating. Manage your external environment, your online environment and your offline environment. And be sure that you're taking care of yourself. Get adequate rest. Make sure you have time that you need to prepare for sessions the same way you would prepare for a meeting if you were in the workplace. Or in person for that matter. So dealing with distractions, you know, this really relates to this environmental distraction. As I said, attention is your currency. Spend it well. There are two things that human beings like to avoid. We like to avoid focus and concentration, among other things. Why? Because they require some effort and work, and we're masterful at finding ways to create more ease in our lives. So try to learn to make friends with the qualities of focus and concentration. And a big tip here is if you are practicing any kind of regular mindfulness or meditation practice, this will help you to develop concentration skills. It helps you to develop stillness and the ability to sit presently in the moment. So if you need to know more about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. The big one that we talked about at the beginning is the stress that we're all experiencing and screen fatigue, something that, you know, I think we were somewhat aware of. It was emerging pre-COVID, but we're really aware of it now. So my tips here, increase your self-awareness, tune in, check into yourself. How am I doing? What do I need right now? And manage that screen time. Be selective about what you say yes to and say no. Also, try not to book back-to-back meetings. Book in transition time where you can have refreshment, rest, or exercise, and get offline and get into nature. Even if nature is your backyard or your patio garden. A little bit of green space, a little bit of forest bathing, as people call it, really, really helpful to reduce stress and keep us away from screens. So really, my main tip here, though, is to practice mindful self-compassion. Be gentle with yourself. You're not going to do it all perfectly. We're all just doing the best we can. So be gentle with yourself and be gentle with others as you learn. You know, as we say here in British Columbia, be calm and be kind. So there's a number of kinds of online meetings. I'm just going to stop for a moment here and just, excuse me. There's personal meetings, there's professional meetings, and there's the one-to-many where we are, you know, giving a webinar or something to a large group, something like this. There's a lot of you out there. You know, hi to all of you. And then, of course, there's virtual events, which have a slightly different nuance. So just going to take a look here at this slide. I've got a few images. So David White offered a it ended up being 4,000 people. He offered 3 Sundays in April, May, and now in July, talking about poetry and using poetry as a vehicle to understand what we're going through. He was able to hold an amazing, energetic space during this. I'm going to talk a bit about that later. But this is a one-to-many model. He's talking to 4,000 people. He's not seeing any of them, but we're all seeing him. Of course, there's the personal celebrations. I had my birthday during the pandemic. Many of my friends and family did as well. And you can see here, this is a very joyful looking celebration. We're actually sharing a very important and rich emotional field online through, in this particular case, if you notice, we've got people engaged. We've asked them to participate. There's a cake, there's candles, there's toys. We said, bring the things that will help you to celebrate and sing happy birthday. So there's ways that you can engage. Plan for your personal events in the same way that you might plan for your personal online events, the same way you might plan for an offline event. We tend to forget that we usually issue invitations with some, bring this, do that, have this, wear a hat, wear a costume, whatever it is. So you can do the same thing in your online personals. What I want to call your attention to here in the Soho virtual event slide is, first of all, something that Soho did. Soho is a small office, home office organization that hosts amazing events in the city of Victoria, BC. And Chris Burge, who you see here pictured, did these as day-long, sometimes 2-day-long events. What he's done is he's broken it down now. And so instead of a long 2-day event or a long 1-day event with stages and speakers and so on, he's doing shorter 1-hour events. So break your longer virtual event into something shorter and more manageable, which will help us with screen fatigue. I also would like to call your attention to the backgrounds here. So you can see that our friend Bosco Anthony is in Australia. He has a virtual background that he's using. This will require him to keep quite still. If Bosco starts moving around, people are going to lose him in the background. So what we lose in a virtual background is, first of all, that's a sense of reality, but also it minimizes our ability to use gesture as a way to communicate. You can see that Chris has chosen to put a branded background in the background. So this is a great idea if you're trying to sell products or services or a cause, put your branding in your background. And of course, I'm in my home office with the very similar background to what you're seeing here, only with the addition of my newest book. So, it's a subliminal kind of form of branding, but it's also, this is my real environment. So just calling your attention to these differences in this one. Over here, I belong to something called the Grey Swan Guild, which is a very interesting think tank, futurist thinkers, global. We have large meetings, we have general assemblies, we have many meetings, and we've come up with some really great ways to engage people. So this is more of what I would call a professional style meeting, a work-related meeting. But you can see here we did a very simple exercise where people were asked to write with a marker on a piece of paper, one of their visions for what we would come out of with our work. And it was very powerful when everyone put these up on the screen, and it was physically engaging. So you can use tools like polls and chat and other kinds of tools within the features, but engage people in a physical activity, something that brings them together, that they can then share. So an individual exercise. The other thing I would suggest is that you use breakout rooms. We are hungry for contact, especially right now. So if you can create opportunities for people to chat in small groups in your virtual event, or even in your meeting, or even in your personal celebration, we'll be emulating a little bit more what we experience in real life. And again, I think there's a danger zone of trying to replicate real life online. But at the same time, it's giving people what they're truly hungering for, which is connection. So these are just some tips based on the various types of meetings that we might be engaged in. There's also spontaneous meetings. Your colleague pings you in Slack or something like that, and you sort of jump on, great advice, be dressed, be ready to take the call, or, be transparent if you're not. In all cases, with all kinds of meetings, you need to know your purpose. So whether you're the host or an attendee, be clear about what the meeting is for. And purpose tends to operate on more than one level. So here's some examples. For personal gatherings, we know we want to stay connected and celebrate together, but we also want to know we're loved, and we want to know that our loved ones are safe and well. In work gatherings, we're forwarding our important tasks and initiatives and our projects. We're trying to accomplish things, but we're also needing to build relationships, to create trust, to enlist allies, and to grow commitment to our ideas and initiatives. So there's this whole other thing we're trying to do. And with one-to-many events or with virtual events, we're trying to convey big ideas. We're wanting to teach and learn. We're there for professional or personal development and growth, and of course, to promote our products and services and causes. But we're trying to also create a community through this shared experience and common purpose and shared learning. So again, another purpose that's below the kind of surface purpose. So know what the purpose is, and then try to design your meetings in order to meet that very important purpose. We're also after something else when we gather. We're looking for something called chemistry. We're looking for that real-time engagement and symbiosis that occurs when we gather. This is where we create our best ideas. And this is the kind of magic, that chemistry that happens between people. We're finding ways to be able to create that online. And I want to just shout out Andrea Cates, one of my colleagues, for putting this notion into my head about the importance of chemistry. We're also after a kind of emotional intelligence and connection. Emotion drives commitment, and we need that commitment in order to make our ideas real, in order to get traction on them. We also need, as humans, to deeply connect and feel a sense of belonging with others. So we're after that, and we're after a kind of empathetic response from the people that are leading our meetings and from each other. We're also looking to co-create. We need diverse inputs. We need to make things together, and we need to co-create new possibilities now more than ever when the future is so uncertain. We have the opportunity to create the future we want together. So how do we make meeting magic? And I've just got this beautiful email from David White after, I think it was after the May sessions finished. And he talks about the experience being both intimate and moving and having a powerful sense of atmosphere. And part of how he created that was by himself sitting in his own energetic field of presence, and of maintaining eye contact through the camera, and of including the very varied and wide and large audience, referencing them, and not by name, of course, but just by saying you are out there and you are maybe in Canada, maybe you're in Mumbai, or maybe you're in South Africa, those kinds of references. So we can make meeting magic in a lot of different ways. So this was sort of my sixth point. We may need to invent something new. Some of the ways that I think you can really make your meetings stand out and also be really effective and really connecting and very authentic is to establish rituals that create a sense of belonging for the group of people you're bringing together. One of the ways is to have, say, we're having a check-in. Every meeting, the first thing we're going to do is a personal check-in. My husband works for a large international organization, working from home. They start all their meetings with a personal check-in. How are you really? What's really going on right now? You can do something like read or write some poetry together, or share a theme song, or ask people to bring their favorite songs, or in the chat to name their favorite song or their theme song of the moment. There's lots of ways to engage people. Because we're reliant more on gesture for visual cues, and we have the opportunity with video conferencing to do that, you can create a language of gestures that are unique to your team. Hand on your heart in my meditation groups, this means I'm moved, I'm touched, I see you, I hear you. Thumbs up, I agree. We use the Vulcan Salute in one of my groups, and I mean, people use it in different ways. It's our ritual. To me, it means you're hugged. Consider yourself hugged. And of course, thank you, or namaste, which is a universal gesture, but you could use this gesture in a specific way for your group. Another thing that I think is really effective and really, really helpful in setting meetings apart is to host an after hours. This doesn't have to be lengthy. It can be even just 5 or 10 minutes at the end of your session or meeting, where you invite people to kind of hang around and just chat naturally for a few minutes. At that time, generally during these sessions, we want to have mics off, right? We want to make sure that people are muted and only speaking kind of when it's their turn, because otherwise we're dealing with a lot of noise distraction. So with an after hours, though, I would recommend you put the mics on and let people converse in a more natural way, where we do trip over each other and we do interrupt and that sort of things. You can also do this during a transition if you're doing a larger event or an event that's over a longer period of time, and say, before we go to our break, let's just have a couple of minutes of chat. You can also invite people to wear hats, or have another ritual that signals this is not work. Have a drink, bring your coffee, bring your tea, bring a snack, that kind of thing. Generally, we don't want to see you eating on camera. However, if you're doing a shared brunch, everybody brings their meal. So these are the kinds of ways that you can signal that we're in this together as humans, to really humanize, to be fully human in a technical world. So I said I was going to touch in on some opportunities. I'll do that very, very quickly for you. The shift in how we communicate globally means we have the opportunity to redefine how we do digital. We get to find new and creative ways to use this technology for what I see as its highest purpose, which is to connect us, to help us get to know and understand each other. One of the great benefits is that we can now engage broader audiences without geographic or physical boundaries. So, you know, for many people, they're finding they used to host a meeting or a session of some kind in their hometown, at the church basement, or in a hall or a hotel. But they're now finding they're getting new audience from around the world because they can offer their product, service, or enlist people to their cause online. So this is a great new opportunity to become more global, to become more conscious of time zone and language barriers, and to weave those experiences into our meetings so that we can be as inclusive as possible. I have a lot of tips for this kind of thing in my book, Effective Communication, because we talk a lot about remote global work there, and also the importance. Oops, excuse me, technical. The importance of cross-cultural understanding and mutual understanding of different ways of being in the world. We also have, this opportunity. My apologies, to facilitate digital literacy, to become the teachers of what we know, and to ensure that everyone has equal access, regardless of age or demographic boundaries, to this information of how to use technology wisely and well. I found that a special challenge during the pandemic with having elderly parents and wanting them to be able to engage on Zoom and, just crossing that digital divide, but becoming kind of a leader of that in my family. And we have that opportunity to lead this wave of change. Together, we can develop and emerge the best practices that we think are the important ones. And we can do that work together. We can make some magic. So I would just say, my final tip is about what I call Uber maturity, or taking self-responsibility. If you're the host, be transparent, be familiar with technology, prepare your people, practice empathy, and be creative and skillful. Be present and hold the space. If you're a participant, be present and hold the space. Help that host out. Minimize the distractions the best you can. Do the best you can in your home environment. Do the preparation that's sent to you. Have the links handy. Know what the password is. Participate fully. Mind your manners, of course. Practice good online etiquettes and be patient. Let's not squander the opportunity we have to change how we do meetings and make them more meaningful. Let's not squander the opportunity to be more democratic and encourage digital literacy for all. And let's not squander this opportunity to be more fully human online. We can leverage the chemistry and emotional intelligence and the power of co-creation and change the way we do business. And we can usher in our own new reality. We need these skills. We can call these aptitudes or attitudes skills: open-mindedness, adaptability, patience, and the willingness to learn. And practice Uber maturity. We are the leaders that we're looking for. What can we co-create together? Let me leave you with a poem. This is the time of invisible hugs, of the hold on tight despite. It's now, in the world of distance, that we can work at the invention of remaining together. With that, I thank you. You can find me online, you can find my books online, and I look forward to hearing more from you. Please connect.
That was so good. I made notes. I watched it before, and I made more notes this time. Holy cow, there's a giant spider coming down.
Even though I'm hidden behind the screen, Vicki, your voice is so, I don't know, it's so calming. Can you talk to me every day when I'm stressed?
We can, actually. We can Zoom.
Come on.
I'll wear my
April,
pajamas,
you might as well come on camera. Yeah,
you can see my lips.
You can host the questions from here. That's good. Great feedback in the chat, Vicki. Were you happy with that?
Yeah, and thanks so much, everyone, for your engagement. And I mean, already people were popping up with ideas. I thought, oh, that's good. That's in the video. So, yeah, really awesome.
We'll get into the questions in a minute. So there's a whole bunch of questions that we've captured that April has got. I've also got notes of things that I wanted to emphasize that you kind of opened my eyes to a few different things. So much more to this than there is on the surface. You think you're just going to talk about meetings. You're going to talk about your background. But there's so much. I think that's me. I'm all about technology. But that was really eye-opening. So thank you for that. So for everybody, just before we jump in, before we get into the Q&A, a few housekeeping matters. This replay will be available to you tomorrow. We'll be sending it out. A few people have asked if they could use this to share with their group. And if Vicki's okay with it, I am. Yeah. What we'll do is we'll set up a separate link. I'll share a separate link with you for the YouTube video that you can share with others. So you'll just have that video, but not the whole webinar, but you'll just have the video. Because
that would be great.
The idea about when we share this stuff for the social good, because this stuff, it helps us personally as well as professionally. So I think we're happy to have it shared. Just make sure you share Vicki's site and her Amazon link with you. You can use my affiliate link for her Amazon book.
Book, if you don't mind.
That would be good.
It's a tough time to launch a book during a pandemic. Yeah. It's been really hard. Yeah.
So that's good. And while we've been going on, we need to welcome Marjo Huff, who is now our newest patron. So thank you very much. Sorry, I should use Vicky's gestures. There we go. We should thank. Come on, April. Give a nice gesture. Thank you. I love that idea. I love the idea.
And you can come up with your own, Steve. Like, what are the Dottotech gestures? Maybe they're going to be something.
He storms the castle, and he is a little bit rude. He's for sure.
But I've always been all about body language, and I've done it intuitively by, like, I make eye contact with the camera more than most because of my background on television. I'm used to looking at a camera, talking while I'm talking to you, and I think that engages people. When I get tired, I start to watch the person on the screen. But when I'm focused and I'm engaged, I look at the camera, and that's but that's a sign of respect for the person. That's what I try and do. But
and it's a nice signal.
Traditions, yeah,
it's a nice signal of listening, right? I find I use it if I'm, especially in a one-to-one conversation, say with a friend, and we're looking at each other, but then they're saying something really meaningful. I will look at the camera so that at least on their end, I'm looking at them, and they feel more listened to and heard.
And these are subtle little things. Like, as a host, like for broadcasts like this, when I watch other people delivering their content, and if they are here, if they are making notes, if they're doing this as you're talking, I get a sense. I wonder if they're fully engaged.
Are they on their phone? Are they? Yeah. And so, I think the biggest tip I would say for people to take away, the biggest thing you can do is actually not like, it's not a physical, technical thing. It's just to be present. It's just simply to be at the meeting or in the session while you're in the session, instead of checking your phone, eating your lunch, doing many other things, which is also an offline communication thing.
This is a thing where you mentioned towards the end, I made a note. I said, don't hide, push forward so people feel your support. So as somebody is presenting in a meeting, a lot of people turn off their cameras, and I guess that's fine. That's certainly, it's better to turn off your camera if you're going to be eating or being distracted or going to be, playing with the cat or changing the baby on the table, right? It's better that, but for the most part, people, if you make yourself seen through your energy, through paying attention, even making notes, but paying attention as you would in a classroom and not trying to hide. And I think sometimes with online meetings, we don't want to be a distraction. So we want to blend into the background.
Yeah, I think that's important. Like, I think you're making a really important distinction. So if, for example, because we're now in this really weird environment, as I spoke to in the slides, where our lives are happening at home, our work is happening at home, everything is happening in the same universe. And so you may have to attend to something because you're at home. So then turn off your video and do what you have to do so you're not distracted. Or if you really have to get up and move around because maybe your back hurts or whatever, it's polite in a way to turn your video off so that you're not creating visual. Like, if I was doing this the whole time that you're trying to talk, that's not really useful for you. It's not supporting the message that you're trying to get out. But if I don't go on video at all, you have no cue from me. There's no way of knowing you're talking to a black box. And there's this interesting dance that we're doing right now with trying to give people that option, because being on camera itself is stressful, especially if you're not used to it. And many of us were used to using these tools before, but now we're not used to it. We've never had to do it in our workplace, perhaps. So I think it's an opportunity to say, okay, just everybody, if you want to turn off your video for a few minutes, do it, or take a break and let everybody go off camera and then come back. I love something that you did at the beginning, Stephen. I was going to point it out. Is I talked about the need to be more verbally directive and ask more questions, because we can't always see each other, especially in large Zoom rooms, for example. So you did a great thing. You said, Vicky, you'll look at the bottom of your screen and you'll see two icons. Click them off. So you were giving me the verbal directions that I needed to engage in the tech effectively, which is a really great, right? So you may need to say, okay, Vicky, I see you're in the black box. Do you have your hand up? Is there something you need? You might need to, if you can't see people, you may need to ask, is everybody nodding? Is there anybody that doesn't, that didn't understand what we just said? Please put it in the chat, so that you're starting to use more of those verbal directive questions. When you can't see the participants.
Because of I believe that a big part of our, what we call Zoom exhaustion, comes from the fact that we don't draw any energy any physical energy from the people in the room that we used to do. So you're in a meeting, you're doing a presentation, you're always drawing energy from the people at you, even just in a small 3 or 4 person meeting. People's body language, them nodding their head, just you draw energy from them. You're trying. I feel like when I'm in an online meeting, like I'm trying to pull that energy out of a stone, but when I do have people in the room that are nodding or like loving, we're going to introduce these gestures into the Brainwave community, right? April, we're going to come up with our own.
Mind blown. How about that one? That's a great one for your stuff, Steve. Whoa.
Yeah. But I mean, that makes a great image. I mean, somebody sitting there delivering a presentation and having everybody going, oh, like that would be like, yes, it's like applause. It's like the laughter you would get because you can't hear the laughter coming back.
Yeah.
So these
part of that co-creative piece that you're talking about as well. So energy, of course, we draw it from, but we also give it to. So as both a participant and a meeting leader, you can be in your own energy. So as a participant, what I'm was trying to get across as a point is the Uber responsibility. I have a responsibility as a participant to be energetic, to participate. And if I want success for that meeting or for that particular host, then I think we all need to take that on, especially now when we're navigating this new way of being. If we really want to create genuine chemistry in groups online, if we really want to have genuine connection, people are craving it. When I go out and poll people, they say, oh, I'm missing the real connection that happens in person. We have to create it. We have to be that present for one another. The David White example is phenomenal. I mean, this guy's holding a room literally of 4,000 people around the world, and the energy is palpable. You can feel in the online environment what he's creating.
Maybe there's less exhaustion, even as a participant, if you actively engage, as opposed to if you try and just make it through it.
Yeah,
right?
I think so. Yeah. We're still learning. We're really learning, and I want to be really, encouraging about this. Like, we can invent this together.
I have dominated the questions, and I got a whole bunch more. But April, let's get to what everybody's asking online.
All right. So our friend Jeffrey's saying, I'm in education, and it looks like we're starting the new school year online. Do you think that I should have small group meetings rather than large class meetings? I will not know this group of students from the start. What's your advice? He's a 3rd grade teacher.
Oh boy.
Yeah. That's a tough. And I have a really good friend who's a third grade teacher, and what a great grade that is to teach. The kids are still loving learning, right? And they're loving their teachers, and they're so
but that's also an age group that's going to be a lot more difficult to deal with online. I think grade 6 or 7 is where they start to have the focus for online.
I'm not sure about that.
My friend's experience has been really positive with online teaching, and in fact, he's making a very strong pitch to his district to continue even when they open up, because he's felt very successful. I would say you're going to want, and I don't know a lot about the 3rd grade teaching part of it, but I would say just in terms of group management, you want to do some of both. It's really great. There's something really powerful about seeing everyone almost in all those boxes, right? We see each other, and we know that we're with this group. But then the breakout rooms, I have found and someone mentioned it in the chat while we were watching the video, the breakout rooms I found a great way. People are hungry for connection, and kids will be as well, because they're probably having semi-isolated existences right now as well. So to have the opportunity to do both, put them in the small groups, bring them out and have them report back to the larger group. And you can do that as talking heads. You can have them, color something, write something. One of the groups that I'm in, we regularly use, get your marker out, grab a piece of paper, write down your response to this, and we're all writing, and then we all hold them up. I think I had a picture of that. It's really great, and there's like a goosebump moment when you see either the words or the image, draw something of how you're feeling right at the moment. It's very, so I would say to try to balance with both, and I'm going to be really interested in what educators come up with. I think
there was actually a really interesting comment. Depending on what parents you have available, with grade 3 kids, you'll have a lot of parents available. If your school district was to use Zoom, you could predetermine your breakout rooms, what kids are in the rooms. And if you have enough organizational skill to be able to organize a few parents, the suggestion that John put in of having parent moderators in the breakout room, because the kids will behave a lot better if there's one adult in the room.
Well, they must be highly patient parents, because I would be bad at that.
Yeah, you can be bad. But maybe they can learn. But
there'll be some that will really like it, and that's the thing about leaning into this is the digital literacy question as well. I think it relates.
Yeah. There
are going to be people, and there are parents who would be very much wanting to support the digital crossover for their kids.
Yeah.
And so we need to, as of members of a whole larger community of a bigger world, we need to each say, okay, where am I prepared? Like I was prepared during the pandemic to teach my older family members about Zoom.
Yeah.
I was committed to it. I knew they couldn't do it themselves. I knew they couldn't do it online. They can't go online and watch a video because they don't know how to get out of their email into a browser, you know? So it's like making that commitment. And when I do host meetings, I make sure that the people that are coming on, if I know their skill, you know, I kind of know my friends, I know their skill levels, that kind of thing. Make sure we help each other out before we get on there so that everybody can play in. So, yeah.
Okay. Next question.
All right, Michael's asking about bridging the digital divide, Vicki. What action should we take to support our communities to make the internet and online tech available to more citizens? I'm discovering so many in our community who have limited or no internet access and limit or no technology. Your answer, your end of your answer kind of led into this question.
It led into it, and I just want to say, to me, this is like the failed promise of the internet, right? Like the internet was the big promise was everybody will be connected, we'll get into remote communities, we'll make sure there won't be economic barriers, you know, and of course we have all kinds of barriers to people having access to internet. First of all, the fact that you're asking the question is the very first step. The fact that you're willing to say, I've noticed in my community that this is happening, and how can we help? Like, what can we do? I know that Steve's putting up his phone, so
the phones are.
Okay.
A lot of older people are intimidated by their computer, or they don't have a more powerful enough computer. They don't have the gear on. They don't have a microphone and a camera on the computer, but they've got it on their phones.
Yeah,
and
the phone is a great equalizer as long as people can afford it.
Yeah.
As long as you can afford it. Yeah, and I'd love to see a movement start around ensuring access. I mean, I actually, one of my members of my family is very engaged in northern communities in trying to bring, you know, and has been for years.
So it's recognizing that it's still a problem is the first step.
Yes, it's the very first step. And again, there's such an opportunity being afforded by what's happening now in this disruption in the world, where we are going to get to remake a bunch of things. Mm-hmm. We simply are, because some of the old things are just going to fall away. And so we can be very purposeful about that. We can decide to take, you know, I've decided that digital literacy is going to be a message that I'm going to carry. And luckily I have some books as vehicles to do that. But, you know, it kind of emerged, it wasn't my first purpose. The books came out and I thought, you know, this is really about creating access for people to be able to navigate the digital environment. And now more than ever, we need it. You know, who knew, right?
All right.
Okay.
Well, we kind of do.
All right. Nadia is asking, if I'm not looking at the camera, I'll be looking at notes digitally or on paper. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yes. My answer is we're human. Like I'm not looking at Stephen, I'm looking at April, and I'm having some tea.
Right. Well, and I think I'm always looking at the chat. I'm always looking at the chat, right? I'm like, look up, April, look up.
But it is really useful to use the camera purposefully and to try, you know, as much as you can. And that's why, in part, in the video, someone asked about the box being over top of the titles, was because I was trying to place the visual of myself under the camera. So instead of getting distracted by looking at myself, if I looked there, I'd be looking at the camera. So it was just a little bit of a trick that didn't quite, I didn't quite pull it off entirely. But we're human, you know, first and foremost. So let's be human, and we're in physical bodies. I'm now designing into all of my, you know, designs with clients and others, like honor the physical. Like we need to get up and move around. We need to go refresh ourselves. We need to take bio breaks. I spent more time on Zoom saying I have to pee than I ever have at any other time in my.
Everybody knows. Everybody on our team knows exactly what our biological cycles are.
Yeah, because we forget, you know, we're in this virtual environment. But yes,
as far as having to go
Steve's
pee.
Steve's pretty predictable.
I win, but I'm 62.
Okay. Would you be willing to share the name of the futuristic organization that you referenced?
Yes, I'd be very happy to. I'm a member of the Grey Swan Guild, www.greyswanguild.org. And we are engaged in ushering in a new reality. And you are welcome to join us from anywhere in the world.
They didn't steal the gray from us.
We did not. No, there was a Grey Swan, you know, for those that don't know, is an event that could have been predicted but wasn't, that we could have prepared for but didn't. So as opposed to a Black Swan, which is a completely unpredictable collapse or event, a Grey Swan is something, So we felt that the pandemic fell into that a category of, we knew one was probably going to happen, but we didn't really do as much as we could have globally to prepare.
An earthquake would be a Black Swan event, a gray squid.
Yeah. So Black Swans, they're typically used in the financial environment, like economy. But yes, again, taking this opportunity of this pandemic to leverage in the kind of change we want to see. And so, as I say, digital literacy, Steve has been doing it for many, many years in his own way of, bringing tech to all of us in our homes, no matter what capacity or level we're at. And so, an important time that we need to participate in. We get to. It's almost like we get to do this.
And we're preaching to the choir a bit here, but
I'm sure,
getting it out to our families.
Comments, yeah.
Okay, April.
Rebecca's saying, I'm a college professor and will continue remote-only teaching. The students want to turn off their cameras. I need to see them to assess how they are doing, what they're thinking. How do you suggest I encourage them to keep the camera on? I like the physical gestures because the hand over the heart helps them communicate with each other, and they need their cameras on to share.
Yeah. So I'll just point you to a structure that we use in coaching dimension, which is what we call a designed partnership agreement, right? So I would encourage you with your students to design the agreements of how you're going to be together online and to put forth the case. Here's why we need to be on camera, and to offer the opportunity for breaks off camera. So, what we don't want, for me, the thing about the on-camera thing is I don't want to always have to put on my lipstick. I don't want to always have to do the things that we feel we need to do when we're showing up kind of in person or in public with people. And at the same time, the nuances and cues are so important, and they're so important to their learning and to your ability to co-create and to have that chemistry. And I think if you can make the arguments on the human side of why it's important, not about what we're seeing on camera, it's about the fact that we need to communicate in this way that's really urgent and really important, and design it together. So you have then co-created an agreement and you say, this is how we do meetings. Yeah. And I'm starting more and more now to be more directive about that, just to say, we're having a meeting, everybody needs to be on camera, so be prepared to be on camera.
And in part and parcel of that is for the small collection of people who just were kind of, or for the people who were in reaction mode as the pandemic hit, and they had to set up a Zoom location in their home office that was not ready for public presentation. So they use virtual backgrounds to hide the messy background behind them, or they use a green screen or something. Yeah. I think that we now recognize that if it's at all possible, get with the program and set yourself up in an environment that you can broadcast from.
Yeah, and
that you're not embarrassed to share from. You don't make people feel uncomfortable because of your sloth.
Yeah, unless of course you're on a meeting with Steve, because he'll point it out. But no, just kidding.
Yeah, I will.
I think too, it's this idea of transporting over those offline expectations to online. So you probably have some parameters and rules for how your students show up in the classroom. Yeah. Like they have to wear clothes, right? They can't show up in class without clothes, for example. I mean, we're very relaxed about how we dress and so on, but there's certain etiquettes that we expect in day-to-day life. So we're really just saying we get to set those parameters and etiquettes up in the online environment as well. Ideally do it together, because then you have buy-in, and then you have people that take ownership of their part of that. But it's not, I don't think it's an unreal expectation to say to someone, we expect everyone to be on camera during class. We will take breaks so you can take a rest from the screen or go and do things, or, some people just need it. Sometimes, I've had moments where I've just thought, I just need to shut off my screen, and, I want to actually shut off everyone's screen sometimes. I don't want to see anyone,
And Sharon pointed out, when you're in Australia, hair and makeup at 4 a.m. is to be visual on the real pain. That's part of that agreement that you're talking about with your team is, if you've got members of your team who are having to jump on a call because of the greater good, and it's 2 a.m. in the morning for them, I think you cut them some slack. And if they don't want their camera on, even though it's the standard that everybody's camera's on, no, you don't have to turn on your camera. You got out of bed at 2 a.m. to jump on this call. We don't expect you to be camera ready. Yeah.
Or we could
being fair to everybody.
Or we could design the world that I'm dreaming of, where we can all just show up in pajamas.
Yeah, you do like your pajamas.
We did. Steve and I actually had a pre-meeting, and I was in my pajamas, and we said we should take a screenshot of this to show people that this is,
I found it very odd.
The ad hoc meeting, right? I'm just showing up as I am.
All right. Yeah. So this question is for either of you. Any platform ideas for larger meetings? I'm finding Zoom doesn't handle breakout rooms well over 200 people. I was testing out Hopin, but they can get very expensive fast.
Okay. My opinion on this, I will share, because I've done a lot of thinking on this, and because of the variety of different types of broadcasts that we do, some of them are meetings, some of them are presentations, Meetings with over 200 people are not meetings. They are webinars. They are presentations. And you shouldn't be using, I don't think we should be trying to use a tool like Zoom where you have multiple people on screen and can engage with that many people, because it's just impossible. It's a presentation. So using a tool like GoToWebinar, if you're in the kind of the meeting environment, using Zoom webinars in that case instead of Zoom meetings, or using a straight up webinar package once you're in a larger group is preferable. You can still have an active chat, but once you get, we find in our sessions, once you get above about 200, 300 people, 250 to 300 people, the chat, if there's any active chat happening, it becomes too busy and too fast for you to stay on top of. By example, this is a nice engaged conversation that we're having here with this presentation. We have currently about just under 200 people in the room. We were averaging about 200 people. You've seen that the chats moved on at a speed that most of us could follow comfortably, and most of us could stay engaged with all of the conversation. Once we're above this number, it becomes just too busy. So I don't think that you should even be trying to have a meeting at 200 people. You should be looking at doing it as presentations, and then possibly, if you do have to have meetings, looking at smaller groups to break out in using another, like using a series of Zoom meetings or something like that afterwards. But there's no way to bring all those people together at one time in a meeting environment. I don't.
Yeah.
Vicki?
I was just going to, probably this is also a question, is that there may be, and I don't know this, but there may be platforms designed for large digital online events. So for example, if you're hosting something that is like what was a conference that you would have gone to in person, that would have been 1,000 people, and now you're trying to host 1,000 people in an online event. I don't know what that is myself. I do have a couple of colleagues who are in the event planning business. Steve probably knows the same people that may know of platforms. And I certainly know there are now all kinds of certification programs happening for people who want to run digital events. So where we're looking at something that is, beyond the scope of the kind of webinars or presentations 200-300. Although I will say the David White example that I used, 4,500 people using Zoom webinar. That's the tool
Zoom
that
webinar,
he used.
but not Zoom meeting. He was using,
but not Zoom meetings. And we weren't chatting. There was a Q&A part that I was at the end that was managed separately.
Yes, and in that case, you have to do that. You can't have a live chat happening because it goes too fast, but you can have a Q&A which is monitored, and then you bring the questions up afterwards. But it's,
and you can even bring the questioners in, which is something he did that was kind of cool.
Yeah, you can do that.
Questions from people
it's just
live.
like being but that's like being in an auditorium with 3,000 people and having the microphone and having people walk up to the microphone and then selecting individual microphones. It's workable, but it's not a meeting. It's a presentation.
Right. Yeah. It's a different thing. It's like it goes more into that online virtual events, only on the larger scale, which I know I didn't really cover, but yeah.
Can you stick around for a few more minutes, Vicki? We've got more questions, but we have reached the top of the hour. And as is, we like to let people that have to go because they schedule an hour for us. So if you have to run right now, thank you so much for spending this time with us. And I know that you thank Vicki incredibly for her time.